Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UCS Liberty, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. His ship carried 50,000 people to their new home on a distant planet called Kepler 442c. The journey would take 6 more months, but Jake felt good about the mission. These colonists would build humanity's newest frontier settlement. The communication officer, Lieutenant Amy Foster, suddenly looked up from her station with worry in her eyes. "Captain, we're getting distress signals from the outer colonies. Multiple sources." Jake walked over to her station, put them through the main speakers. The first message crackled with static and fear. "This is New Austin Colony calling any human ships. We are under attack by unknown creatures. They came out of nowhere through some kind of space rifts. Our weapons don't work on them. They're hunting us like animals. Please send help." The message cut to screaming, and then silence. Another message followed immediately. "Haven Prime 2, Earth Command. Massive alien predators have overrun our settlement. These things are 12 feet tall with armor like insects. They have 6 arms ending in claws that can cut through steel. They're not just killing us. They're playing with us first. We've lost contact with the outer districts. If anyone receives this," warned the other colonies. Jake felt his stomach drop. He had friends on Haven Prime. "How many colonies are reporting attacks?" Amy checked her screen. 7 so far, sir. All Outer Rim settlements. On Luna Station, near Earth's moon, Commander Lisa Park reviewed the reports in the Colonial Defense Headquarters. She had been a soldier for 20 years, but these reports made her hands shake. The aliens weren't acting like typical invaders who wanted resources or territory. They were acting like hunters who enjoyed the chase. Lisa called up the security footage from New Austin Colony on her screen. What she saw made her step back from the monitor. The creatures moved with fluid grace despite their size. Their chitinous armor reflected the colony's lights like black mirrors, but it was their behavior that disturbed her most. They clearly could have killed the colonists quickly, but instead, they seemed to be enjoying the terror they caused. One creature cornered a family in their home. Instead of attacking immediately, it tapped its claws against the wall, creating a rhythm like a heartbeat. The family huddled together, and the creature tilted its head as if studying their fear. Only then did it strike. Lisa turned off the video. She had seen enough warfare to know the difference between soldiers and sadists. These aliens were the latter. Admiral Roy Carter received Lisa's report in his office on Luna Station. Roy had commanded human space forces for 15 years. He had fought pirates, rebels, and hostile alien species, but nothing in his experience prepared him for this enemy. "They call themselves the Vorthak," Lisa explained to the assembled military leaders. "Based on the few survivors who escaped, they're from a world where everything evolved to hunt and kill. They view humans as the perfect prey species because we show fear before we die." General Carl Webb studied the tactical reports. "What's our current military response?" "We've deployed 3 battle fleets to the affected systems," Roy answered. "Admiral Stone is leading the counterattack with our most advanced ships." The news from the counterattack came 3 days later. Admiral Stone's fleet had found the Vorthak ships orbiting the ruins of Haven Prime. The human warships opened fire with plasma cannons, missile barrages, and even nuclear weapons. The Vorthak vessels absorbed the attacks without visible damage. Then, the Vorthak responded. Their ships released hundreds of the creatures into space. The Vorthak moved through the vacuum like they were swimming, using some kind of natural ability to navigate without ships. They boarded the human vessels and began hunting the crews. Admiral Stone's final message was brief. "They're inside the ship. Our weapons are useless. They're not trying to capture us or take prisoners. They're hunting us for sport. Tell Earth to run." Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the chief xenobiologist, studied the limited data they had collected about the Vorthak. Her laboratory on Luna Station had become the center for understanding this new threat. What she learned made the situation even worse. "These creatures come from a death world," Elena explained to the Emergency Council. "Every species on their planet evolved as either a predator or prey. The Vorthak became the apex predators by developing not just physical superiority, but psychological. Warfare. They've learned that fear makes prey easier to catch. So they're smart, Roy said. Worse than smart, they're creative. They invent new ways to terrify their victims because terror is part of their hunting strategy. To them, fear is a seasoning that makes the kill more satisfying. Lisa looked at the tactical displays showing the positions of human colonies. How many settlements have we lost? 7 confirmed destroyed. 3 more have gone silent in the last 12 hours. The Vorthak are moving deeper into human space with each attack. The council fell silent. Humanity faced an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with, couldn't be bribed, and apparently couldn't be killed with conventional weapons. The Vorthak seemed unstoppable. Lieutenant Kevin Stone, Admiral Stone's nephew, sat in the back of the meeting room. He was a junior officer assigned to help with logistics, but he had been studying the reports carefully. Kevin specialized in terraforming biology, which meant he spent most of his time learning about Earth's ecosystems. As the council discussed evacuation plans and desperate last stands, Kevin raised his hand. "Excuse me, sir. I have an idea." "Admiral." Carter looked annoyed. "This is not the time for junior officers to speak." "Please, sir. I think I know why our weapons don't work on them." Elena turned to face Kevin. "Explain." Kevin stood up nervously. "I've been studying Earth biology for terraforming projects. The Vorthak evolved on a death world where everything is a predator, right? But Earth is also a death world. We just don't think of it that way because we evolved here." The room stayed quiet, so Kevin continued. "Every creature on Earth has been fighting other creatures for millions of years. Our planet created predators that are just as deadly as anything the Vorthak have faced. Maybe deadlier because Earth's predators had to get creative to survive." Lisa leaned forward. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that our biggest weapons aren't our ships or our guns. Our biggest weapons are the creatures we share our planet with. Earth has produced predators that have been perfecting the art of killing for longer than the Vorthak species has existed." Elena's eyes widened as she understood. "You're talking about weaponizing Earth's biology. Not just weaponizing it, improving it. We know how to manipulate genetics. We know how to enhance natural abilities with technology. What if we took Earth's most successful predators and made them even better?" Admiral Carter frowned. "You want us to fight aliens with animals?" Kevin shook his head. "Not animals, sir. Nightmares. Earth has spent 4 billion years creating the most efficient killing machines in the galaxy. We just need to set them loose." The meeting room erupted in arguments. Some called the idea insane. Others said it was impossible. But Elena stood up and silenced the room. "The boy is right," she said. "We've been thinking like humans fighting aliens. But what if we thought like Earth fighting a death world? What if we reminded the galaxy why Earth's predators have never been conquered?" Admiral Carter looked around the room at his officers. Humanity was losing the war badly. Conventional tactics had failed completely. Perhaps it was time to try something unconventional. "Dr. Rodriguez, how quickly could you put together a research team?" Elena smiled for the first time in weeks. "Give me a week to assemble the right people. If we're going to unleash Earth's nightmares on the Vorthak, we need to do it right." As the meeting ended, Kevin remained behind. He stared out the window at Earth, turning slowly in the darkness of space. Humanity's homeworld looked peaceful from this distance, but Kevin knew better. Earth was a forge that had created predators, capable of surviving anything the universe could produce. The Vorthak had made a terrible mistake. They had declared war on the children of the ultimate death world. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the cargo bay of the research vessel Deep Explorer, watching her team load equipment for the most dangerous mission of her career. The ship would take them to Earth's most remote and deadly locations. Their goal was simple but terrifying: find Earth's most perfect killers and learn from them. The project had a code name that made Elena smile grimly. They called it the Darwin Protocol, after the scientist who first understood how evolution created monsters. If humanity was going to fight the Vorthak, they needed to understand what 4 billion years of survival had taught Earth's predators. Admiral Carter had given Elena unlimited resources and complete secrecy. No politicians, no media, No interference from people who might not understand what needed to be done. Elena knew that if word got out about weaponizing Earth's wildlife, there would be protests and investigations. They couldn't afford delays, while the Vorthak continued hunting human colonies. Dr. Greg Allen checked his deep-sea diving equipment one final time. Greg was a marine biologist who had spent years studying the creatures that lived in Earth's deepest oceans. He knew that the bottom of the sea held horrors that most people couldn't imagine. "The Mariana Trench is our first stop," Greg told his team. "Down there, creatures have been fighting for survival in conditions that would kill most life forms instantly. Crushing pressure, total darkness, and temperatures near freezing. The things that live there are pure predators because nothing else can survive." Dr. Beth Morgan loaded her specimen containers with extra care. As an entomologist, Beth studied insects, but she specialized in the ones that most people considered nightmares. Her research focused on creatures like army ants, bullet ants, and parasitic wasps. She knew that Earth's smallest predators were often the most creative killers. "People think big predators are the most dangerous," Beth explained to her assistant. "But they're wrong. Insects have been perfecting the art of killing for 300 million years. They've invented biological weapons that make human technology look primitive. The deep explorer's first destination was the Pacific Ocean above the Mariana Trench. Greg suited up in a specialized diving suit that could withstand the crushing pressure 7 miles below the surface. His mission was to observe and record how deep-sea predators hunted in conditions that seemed impossible for life. The descent took 3 hours. As Greg's submarine sank deeper, sunlight faded until he was surrounded by complete darkness. But the darkness wasn't empty. It was full of creatures that glowed with their own light, using bioluminescence to hunt and communicate. Greg's first encounter was with a giant squid, but not the kind that appeared in old stories. This creature was 60 feet long and clearly intelligent. It approached his submarine with curiosity rather than fear. Greg watched through his cameras as the squid examined his vessel with tentacles that moved like exploring fingers. "This thing is problem-solving," Greg reported back to the surface. "It's trying to figure out what I am and whether I'm edible. The intelligence in those eyes is remarkable. It's not just hunting by instinct. It's thinking." The squid demonstrated its hunting ability when a school of deep-sea fish approached. The creature didn't just grab them with its tentacles. Instead, it used its bioluminescent patches to create flashing patterns that confused and hypnotized the fish. They swam directly into its waiting arms as if they wanted to be caught. Greg spent 6 hours observing deep-sea predators. He watched anglerfish use glowing lures to attract prey in the darkness. He recorded vampire squid that could turn themselves inside out to display terrifying spines when threatened. Most impressive were the creatures that hunted in coordinated groups, communicating through patterns of light that Greg couldn't decode. "The pressure down here would crush a human instantly," Greg reported. "But these creatures move through it like they're flying. They've adapted to conditions that we consider impossible. And they're all predators because this environment doesn't allow for weakness." While Greg explored the deep ocean, Beth Morgan traveled to the Amazon rainforest. The jungle contained more species of insects than anywhere else on Earth, and many of them were specialized killers. Beth's mission was to understand how Earth's smallest predators had developed their hunting strategies. Beth's first study subject was a colony of army ants. She watched from a safe distance as millions of ants moved through the forest like a living carpet. The colony functioned as a single organism with one purpose: consume everything in its path. "Individual army ants are nearly blind," Beth recorded in her notes. "But the colony as a whole sees everything. They communicate through chemical signals that coordinate millions of individual actions into one devastating attack. When they encounter prey, they don't just kill it. They dismantle it systematically and carry every piece back to the colony." Beth observed the ants attack a much larger creature, a snake that had tried to cross their path. The ants didn't panic or retreat. Instead, they swarmed over the snake in organized waves. Some ants held the snake down while others began cutting it apart with their mandibles. Within minutes, a 3-foot snake had been reduced to pieces small enough for the ants to carry. But the most disturbing discovery came when Beth studied parasitic wasps. These creatures had developed a hunting strategy that seemed designed by a sadistic genius. The wasps would paralyze their prey without killing it, then lay eggs inside the still-living victim. The wasp larvae would eat their host from the inside, out, keeping it alive as long as possible to ensure fresh food. These wasps have turned other creatures into living nurseries, Beth reported. They've evolved to keep their victims alive and aware while consuming them slowly. It's biological horror that makes human nightmares look pleasant. Beth's research revealed something that excited and terrified her. Earth's insects had developed almost every conceivable hunting strategy. Some used venom that caused excruciating pain. Others used pheromones to control their victims' behavior. Some species had even learned to farm other creatures, keeping them alive to produce food. Back on Luna Station, Dr. Carl Fisher studied the neural patterns of Earth's pack hunters. Carl was a neurobiologist who specialized in understanding how predator brains worked. His research focused on wolves, lions, and other creatures that hunted in coordinated groups. Carl's breakthrough came when he analyzed brain scans from hunting wolves. The scans showed that pack hunters didn't just cooperate by instinct. They actually shared information through complex neural networks that allowed them to coordinate attacks across large distances. Wolf packs are essentially distributed intelligence systems, Carl explained to Elena. Each individual wolf contributes sensory data and tactical analysis to the pack's collective decision-making process. They're not just animals following a leader. They're a living computer designed for hunting. Carl's research revealed that Earth's pack hunters possessed something that the Vorthak apparently lacked: the ability to adapt their hunting strategies in real time based on their prey's behavior. Wolves could change their attack patterns mid-hunt if their target did something unexpected. The most controversial part of the Darwin Protocol involved studying humanity's own predatory nature. Dr. Nina Wells was a behavioral psychologist who specialized in understanding human aggression and hunting behavior. Her research made everyone uncomfortable, but Elena knew it was necessary. Nina studied historical data on human warfare, hunting practices, and survival situations. Her analysis revealed patterns that most people preferred not to think about. Humans were persistence predators who combined intelligence, endurance, and emotional motivation to hunt prey that was faster and stronger than themselves. Humans are unique among Earth's predators, Nina reported. We don't just hunt for survival. We hunt for emotional reasons: revenge, protection of our group, or elimination of threats. When properly motivated, humans don't just defeat their enemies. They systematically destroy them and everything connected to them. Nina's research showed that humans had one advantage over every other predator on Earth: the ability to hold grudges and plan long-term revenge. While other predators forgot about failed hunts, humans remembered and planned better attacks. Elena gathered all the research teams back on Luna Station after 2 months of fieldwork. The data they had collected painted a picture of Earth that most humans had never considered. Their planet wasn't just a world with some dangerous animals. It was a 4-billion-year-old weapons laboratory that had produced the most sophisticated killers in the galaxy. Every environment on Earth has created specialized predators, Elena told Admiral Carter. The deep ocean produced creatures that hunt in impossible conditions. The forest created swarm intelligences that function as living weapons. The pack hunters developed distributed intelligence systems, and humans became the only species that hunts for emotional satisfaction. Admiral Carter studied the reports with growing amazement. "What are you recommending?" Elena smiled, but there was no warmth in her expression. "I'm recommending that we stop fighting the Vorthak with human technology. Instead, we should fight them with enhanced Earth biology. We take our planet's most successful predators and make them even deadlier. You want to create hybrid creatures?" The Genesis laboratory looked like nothing from the outside. Hidden inside a hollowed asteroid in the belt between Mars and Jupiter, it appeared to be just another mining operation. But inside, humanity was creating its most ambitious and terrifying project in history. Dr. Elena Rodriguez walked through the main laboratory, watching scientists work on projects that would have been called impossible just months earlier. The lab hummed with activity 24 hours a day. Everyone knew that human colonies were still dying while they worked, and that knowledge drove them to push beyond every limit they had known. The first prototype sat in a massive tank filled with artificial seawater. Elena called it Leviathan Alpha, and it was both beautiful and horrible to look at. The creature combined the flexible intelligence of an octopus with the raw power of a great white shark, but it was larger than either. At 20 feet long, it moved through the water with grace that seemed impossible for something so massive. Dr. Greg Allen monitored the creature's neural activity from a control station. "The brain patterns are incredible," he told Elena. "It has the problem-solving ability of an octopus, which means it can figure out complex puzzles and adapt to new situations, but it also has the focused hunting drive of a shark. When it sees prey, everything else disappears from its awareness." Elena watched Leviathan Alpha solve a puzzle that involved opening a series of locks to reach food. The creature studied the mechanism for several minutes, then used its tentacles to manipulate the locks in the correct sequence. But what impressed Elena most was what happened when the puzzle was solved. The creature's entire body changed color to display patterns that could only be described as satisfaction. It enjoys problem-solving, Elena realized. This thing doesn't just hunt by instinct, it takes pleasure in figuring out how to catch difficult prey. Engineer Pete Bradley worked in the mechanical augmentation section, designing the technology that would allow Earth creatures to survive in space and on alien worlds. Pete had spent years studying how machines could merge with biological systems, but this project pushed his skills beyond anything he had imagined. "The key is symbiosis," Pete explained to his team. "We can't just attach machines to animals. The technology has to become part of them, like their own organs. I'm basing the designs on deep-sea creatures that already have natural partnerships with other organisms." Pete's workshop contained dozens of prototypes that looked like they belonged in a nightmare. Mechanical gills that could extract oxygen from any atmosphere. Synthetic muscle fibers that were 10 times stronger than natural ones. Sensory systems that could detect heat, movement, and electromagnetic signatures across vast distances. The most impressive creation was a biomechanical interface that allowed creatures to survive in the vacuum of space. Based on the natural abilities of tardigrades, microscopic creatures that could survive in space without protection, Pete's system created a protective field around larger organisms. "We're not making cyborgs," Pete told Elena during a progress meeting. "We're making evolved creatures. The technology becomes part of their biology, not just attached to it. They can reproduce, heal themselves, and even pass the improvements to their offspring." Dr. Greg Allen's team worked on the pack hunters in a separate section of the laboratory. These creatures were based on wolf DNA but enhanced with human strategic thinking patterns. The result was disturbing to everyone who worked with them. The first pack consisted of 12 creatures that stood 4 feet tall at the shoulder. They looked like wolves, but their eyes held an intelligence that made everyone uncomfortable. The creatures seemed to study the humans who cared for them, as if they were learning about their creator's weaknesses. "They communicate constantly," Greg reported. "Not just through sounds and body language, but through some kind of neural network we don't fully understand. When one member of the pack learns something, the others know it within minutes." Greg demonstrated by teaching one creature to open a complex lock. Within an hour, every member of the pack could open identical locks without any training. More disturbing, they had figured out 3 different ways to open the locks, suggesting they were improving on the original lesson. Elena watched the pack work together to solve a hunting simulation. The creatures moved with perfect coordination, setting up ambushes and herding their mechanical prey exactly like real wolves. But their strategies were more complex than anything seen in nature. They planned multiple moves ahead and adapted their tactics in real time as the situation changed. "They're not just pack hunters," Elena realized. "They're a distributed intelligence system. Each individual creature is smart, but the pack as a whole is brilliant." Dr. Beth Morgan's section focused on what everyone called the swarm units. Based on army and colonies, but scaled up and enhanced with nanotechnology, these creations challenged every definition of individual versus group organism. Each swarm unit contained millions of individual organisms, but they functioned as a single creature, with one mind. Beth had solved the scaling problem by giving each individual ant the ability to carry and process information like a living computer chip. "Watch this," Beth told Elena, pointing to a test chamber. Inside, what looked like a black carpet covered the floor. But as Elena watched, the carpet began to move with purpose. The millions of individual ants flowed together like liquid, forming shapes and patterns that served specific functions. The swarm surrounded a piece of metal debris in the chamber. Some ants began producing acid to dissolve the metal. Others formed living chains to carry away the dissolved material. Still others created geometric patterns that seemed to serve as communication networks for the entire colony. Each ant is enhanced with synthetic biology, Beth explained. They can produce different chemicals depending on what the swarm needs. Some become living welding torches. Others turn into biological sensors. The swarm can reconfigure itself for any task within minutes. Elena watched the swarm completely dismantle and consume the metal debris in less than an hour. When they finished, the ants reformed into a perfect circle and became completely still, as if they were sleeping. "What happens when they encounter living prey?" Elena asked. Beth's expression became grim. "They analyze it, dismantle it, and incorporate any useful biological material into their own structure. They don't just eat their prey, they become it." The most controversial creation was being developed in the laboratory's highest security section. Dr. Nina Wells worked with a small team to create what they called Reaper units. These creatures were based on human genetics but enhanced with predatory traits from Earth's most successful hunters. Elena needed special authorization to enter Nina's section. What she saw there made her question whether they had gone too far. The Reaper units looked human at first glance, but closer inspection revealed modifications that were both subtle and terrifying. "They have human intelligence and creativity," Nina explained. "But we've enhanced their physical capabilities with traits from various predators, enhanced strength from great apes, improved senses from big cats, regenerative abilities from certain reptiles." Elena studied the first Reaper unit through reinforced glass. The creature looked like a tall, athletic human, but its eyes held an intensity that was purely predatory. When it noticed Elena watching, it smiled, and she saw teeth that were slightly too sharp and too numerous. "The psychological profile is the most disturbing part," Nina continued. "They understand fear, strategy, and psychological warfare better than any human. They know how to make their prey terrified before they attack because terror makes the hunt more efficient." Elena watched the Reaper unit solve a complex strategic puzzle that involved predicting the behavior of multiple opponents. The creature didn't just find a solution. It found the solution that would cause maximum psychological damage to its enemies. They enjoy the hunt, Elena realized. Not just the kill, but the entire process of stalking, terrifying, and defeating their prey. Testing revealed that each type of creature excelled in different environments and against different types of enemies. The Leviathan units were perfect for space combat and aquatic environments. The pack hunters dominated terrestrial operations. The swarm units could overwhelm any target through sheer numbers and adaptability. The Reaper unit specialized in psychological warfare and individual combat. But the most important discovery was that all the creatures showed rapid adaptation and learning abilities. They were becoming more effective hunters with each test, developing new strategies and improving their existing abilities. Dr. Carl Fisher monitored the psychological effects of the project on the human staff. "Everyone working here is having nightmares," he reported to Elena. "We're creating things that our own minds recognize as apex predators. Our instincts are telling us to run from our own creations." Elena understood the concern, but she also understood the necessity. The Vorthak had forced humanity into a corner. Conventional weapons had failed completely. These biomechanical nightmares might be their only hope of survival. The breakthrough came when the laboratory successfully captured a living Vorthak specimen. A Leviathan Alpha unit had intercepted a small Vorthak scout ship and brought it back to the laboratory intact. For the first time, humans had the opportunity to study their enemy directly. Commander Alex Turner stood on the bridge of the UCS Predator, watching the planet New Redemption grow larger on the viewing screen. The colony below had been under siege for 3 weeks. 30,000 colonists were trapped while Vorthak hunters used their settlement as a personal hunting ground. Alex had seen the reports from previous rescue attempts. Every human military response had failed. Ships destroyed, crews slaughtered, and the Vorthak treating each attack as entertainment. But today was different. Today, humanity was bringing Earth's nightmares to the fight. Deployment bay ready for release, reported Lieutenant Sam Carter from the tactical station. All units are showing green status. Alex looked at the screens showing the cargo holds of his ship. Instead of human soldiers, the holds contained creatures that made his skin crawl every time he saw them. Leviathan units floated in specialized tanks, their tentacles moving with eager anticipation. Pack hunters paced in their containment areas, their enhanced eyes already focused on something beyond the ship's walls. "Begin the drop," Alex ordered. The cargo bay doors opened, and Earth's predators poured into space around New Redemption. To anyone watching from the planet's surface, it looked like the human ships were bleeding darkness into the void. Down on New Redemption, colonist Mary Johnson huddled with her family in the basement of their home. They had been hiding for days, while the Vorthak played their sick games above. The aliens seemed to enjoy the fear they created, often making noise just to watch humans panic. Mary heard the familiar sound of Vorthak claws scraping against metal, but then something changed. The scraping stopped, replaced by a sound she had never heard before. It was like wind mixed with whale song, but darker and more threatening. Through a small basement window, Mary saw lights moving through the darkness above. But these weren't the harsh spotlights the Vorthak used for hunting. These lights pulsed and flowed like living things, creating patterns that made her feel dizzy just watching them. "What is that?" whispered her husband, Tom. Before Mary could answer, they heard the first Vorthak scream. The sound was nothing like the confident roars the aliens had been making for weeks. This was pure terror. The sound of a predator that had suddenly become prey. The scream was followed by others and then by sounds that Mary's mind couldn't identify. Wet tearing noises, crackling like electricity, and underneath it all a rhythmic pulsing that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Aboard the Predator, Dr. Susan Clark monitored the deployment through dozens of sensors scattered around the colony. Susan was a combat psychologist who specialized in understanding how predators affected their prey. Her job was to document what happened when Earth's nightmares met the Vorthak. "Leviathan Alpha has made contact with the first Vorthak group," Susan reported to Alex. "The aliens are trying their standard intimidation tactics." Alex watched the sensor readings as the encounter unfolded. The Vorthak had cornered a group of colonists in a shopping center and were preparing to begin their usual hunt. The aliens probably expected another easy kill, another chance to terrorize helpless humans. Instead, they met something that had been hunting in Earth's deepest waters for millions of years. Leviathan Alpha phased through the building's wall like it was made of water. The creature's bioluminescent patterns created a light show that filled the shopping center with shifting colors. To the trapped colonists, it looked like salvation had arrived in the form of a beautiful sea monster. To the Vorthak, it looked like death. The lead Vorthak tried to intimidate the new arrival by expanding to its full 12-foot height and roaring its challenge. Leviathan Alpha responded by changing colors to match the alien's chitinous armor, then slowly growing brighter, until the entire building was filled with light that hurt to look at. The Vorthak's roar died in its throat. "The alien is showing classic fear responses," Susan reported with excitement. "Elevated stress hormones, defensive posturing, and retreat behavior. It's never encountered a predator that could match its intimidation tactics." The Vorthak tried to attack, slashing with claws that could cut through steel. Leviathan Alpha simply flowed around the attacks like liquid, its tentacles moving with surgical precision. When the creature struck back, it wasn't quick or brutal. It was methodical, almost gentle as it wrapped tentacles around the Vorthak's limbs and began to squeeze. The alien's chitinous armor, which had shrugged off plasma weapons and missile attacks, cracked under the pressure like an eggshell. In another part of the colony, the pack hunters made their own first contact with Vorthak forces. 12 enhanced wolves moved through the settlement's residential district like ghosts. their improved senses allowing them to track the aliens through walls and underground tunnels. The Vorthak had set up an ambush in a school, planning to trap any humans who tried to rescue the children inside. They had used this tactic successfully on 3 other worlds, enjoying the psychological torture of making parents choose between their children's lives and their own. The pack hunters approached, the school with tactics the Vorthak had never seen before. Instead of rushing in or trying to sneak past the guards, the wolves spread out in a pattern that surrounded the entire building. They moved with perfect coordination, each member of the pack knowing exactly where the others were at all times. They're implementing a strategy that requires planning several moves ahead, Susan observed. The pack is treating this like a chess game, not a simple hunt. The first Vorthak guard died before it realized it was under attack. A wolf materialized from the shadows behind it, moving with speed that seemed impossible for a creature of its size. The alien's thick armor provided no protection against teeth that had been enhanced with synthetic materials harder than diamond. The other Vorthak guards rushed to help their companion, but they found themselves herded into exactly the positions the pack wanted them. Every time the aliens tried to group together for a defensive stand, the wolves forced them to split up. Every time they tried to retreat, they found their escape routes blocked. Within 20 minutes, the school was clear of Vorthak, and the trapped children were safe. But the most disturbing encounter happened in the Colonies' industrial district, where the swarm units made their debut. The Vorthak had been using the factories as torture chambers, taking their time with captured colonists to maximize the fear they could create. The swarm arrived like a black tide that flowed through air vents, drainage pipes, and cracks in the walls. Millions of enhanced ants moved with single-minded purpose, but their target wasn't the human prisoners. The Vorthak found themselves facing an enemy that defied every hunting strategy they knew. The aliens tried to stomp on the insects, but for every ant they killed, 1,000 more took its place. They tried to use their energy weapons, but the ants simply flowed around the blast areas like water. Then the swarm began to feed. The ants didn't attack the Vorthak directly. Instead, they began consuming everything the aliens needed to survive. They ate their weapons, dissolving the metal with acid secretions. They consumed their armor, breaking down the chitinous material at the molecular level. They even began eating the air itself, removing oxygen and replacing it with compounds that made the Vorthak dizzy and confused. The swarm is engaging in systematic resource denial, Susan reported. They're not trying to kill the Vorthak quickly. They're removing everything the aliens need to function as predators. The trapped Vorthak began to panic as they realized they couldn't fight an enemy that attacked their environment rather than their bodies. They had evolved to hunt individual prey, not to fight a living ecosystem that could adapt faster than they could respond. The most psychologically devastating encounter involved the Reaper units. 3 of the human-like predators infiltrated a Vorthak command center where the aliens were coordinating their hunting activities across the colony. The Reapers didn't announce their presence or challenge the aliens to combat. Instead, they began a psychological campaign that turned the Vorthak's own tactics against them. They stalked through the command center like ghosts, allowing the aliens to catch glimpses of movement without revealing themselves fully. The Vorthak, accustomed to being the ones who created fear, found themselves experiencing terror for the first time in their evolutionary history. They tried to hunt the Reapers, but every trap they set turned against them. Every ambush they planned was predicted and countered. The Reapers are demonstrating human-level creativity combined with enhanced predatory instincts, Susan noted. They're not just hunting the Vorthak, they're teaching them what it feels like to be prey. When the Reapers finally revealed themselves, they did so with a cruelty that shocked even Susan. They appeared simultaneously from 3 different directions, moving with impossible coordination. But instead of attacking immediately, they stopped and smiled at the terrified aliens. The Vorthak had spent their entire existence as apex predators. They had never seen a smile that promised death. The battle for New Redemption lasted only 6 hours. When it was over, every Vorthak on the planet was either dead or had fled in panic. The surviving aliens broadcast warnings to their fleet, describing creatures that hunted with intelligence and enjoyed causing fear. Alex received reports from across the colony. General Paul Martinez stood in the command center of the flagship UCS Evolution, watching the tactical display that showed humanity's greatest military operation in history. 6 months had passed since the first deployment of Earth's nightmares, and the war had completely changed direction. The Vorthak, once confident hunters who treated human space as their personal hunting ground, now fled at the first sign of human ships. Their terror had spread through their entire species. Vorthak communication networks carried stories of Earth creatures that hunted with intelligence, creativity, and something the aliens had never encountered before: the ability to enjoy causing fear. Operation Darwin is entering its final phase, Paul told Admiral Carter through the communication link. We're pushing into the heart of Vorthak space. Their homeworld is 3 days away. Admiral Carter's image flickered on the screen. Any signs of organized resistance? Paul checked the tactical reports. They're trying to make a stand at their breeding worlds, but our nightmare units are adapting faster than the Vorthak can respond. Every battle makes our creatures more effective. The truth was both amazing and terrifying. The biomechanical predators weren't just following their programming. They were learning, evolving, and developing new hunting strategies with each encounter. The pack hunters had begun using Vorthak technology against its creators. The swarm units were incorporating alien biological material into their own structure, becoming deadlier with each victory. Dr. Elena Rodriguez monitored the evolution of humanity's created predators from her laboratory aboard the Evolution. What she saw both thrilled and worried her. The creatures were exceeding every parameter she had designed. The Leviathan units are showing unprecedented adaptation, Elena reported to Paul. They're not just hunting Vorthak ships anymore. They're learning to mimic Vorthak communication patterns and using psychological warfare. Elena showed Paul footage from the latest battle. A Leviathan unit had infiltrated a Vorthak fleet by disguising itself as space debris. When the aliens tried to salvage the wreckage, the creature revealed itself and began broadcasting Vorthak distress calls on all frequencies. The calls were perfectly mimicked, causing panic throughout the alien fleet, as they couldn't tell which signals were real. They're turning the Vorthak's own tactics against them, Elena explained. But they're doing it with creativity that we never programmed. They're inventing new forms of psychological torture. The pack hunters had developed even more disturbing behaviors. They had learned to work with human technology, using starship sensors to coordinate attacks across multiple star systems. When Vorthak forces tried to regroup, they found wolf packs waiting for them at every destination. But the most shocking development involved the Reaper units. The human-like predators had begun studying Vorthak culture and psychology, learning to exploit the aliens' deepest fears. They had discovered that the Vorthak species had ancient legends about shadow creatures that hunted in darkness, and the Reapers were deliberately mimicking those mythical monsters. The Reapers are engaging in cultural warfare, Elena told Paul. They're not just hunting individual Vorthak. They're attacking the psychological foundations of their entire civilization. The final assault on the Vorthak homeworld began 3 days later. The planet was a nightmare landscape of jagged mountains and poisonous swamps, exactly what humanity expected from a world that had produced the galaxy's most feared predators. But as the human fleet approached, they found something unexpected. Lao. Vorthak weren't preparing for battle. They were preparing for extinction. Captain Jake Morrison, now commanding the assault carrier UCS Nightmare, led the first wave of the attack. His ship carried the most experienced and deadly creatures in humanity's arsenal. These predators had been fighting Vorthak for months, and each battle had made them more efficient killers. Scanning the planet's surface, reported his tactical officer. The Vorthak appear to be gathering in their breeding grounds. All their military forces are concentrated around the nursery cities. Jake understood immediately. The Vorthak weren't planning a military defense. They were making a last stand to protect their young. The species that had hunted humans for sport was now facing the same terror they had inflicted on others. The nightmare units deployed across the planet's surface like a tide of Earth's darkest evolution. Leviathan units flowed through the poisonous swamps as if they were swimming in Earth's oceans. Pack hunters moved through the jagged mountains with coordination that made the terrain irrelevant. Swarm units consumed everything in their path, turning the Vorthak's defensive preparations into useless debris, but it was the Reaper units that delivered the psychological killing blow. They appeared in the Vorthak breeding grounds not as conquering warriors, but as smiling predators who clearly enjoyed what they were about to do. The sight of creatures that looked almost human but moved with perfect predatory grace shattered the last of Vorthak resistance. The battle lasted only 12 hours. When it ended, the Vorthak species faced a choice they had never imagined having to make: surrender or extinction. The surrender came in the form of a message broadcast on all frequencies from the Vorthak homeworld. The transmission was in broken, human language, clearly translated by creatures who had never expected to need diplomatic communication. "We yield to Earth predators," the message said. "We request mercy from creatures of Death World. We offer service to avoid extinction. Please allow young to live." Admiral Carter received the surrender from his command ship in Earth orbit. The message represented something unprecedented in galactic history. A species that had conquered dozens of worlds was surrendering unconditionally to creatures they couldn't understand or fight. "What are your recommendations?" Carter asked Elena. Elena studied the reports from the Vorthak homeworld. The aliens were genuinely terrified, not just of death, but of the manner of death that Earth's predators promised. They had seen what happened to their companions who fought the nightmare units, and they preferred slavery to that fate. "The Vorthak can be useful," Elena replied. "They're skilled hunters, and they understand alien psychology. Under proper supervision, they could serve as scouts and guards for human colonies." Carter considered the proposal. "Supervised by our creatures?" "Exactly. The nightmare units have established psychological dominance over them. The Vorthak will never dare to rebel as long as they know Earth's predators are watching them." Peace negotiations took place on Luna Station, with representatives from both species meeting under heavy security. The Vorthak delegation consisted of their remaining leaders, massive aliens who had once commanded fleets of hunter ships. They now moved with the nervous caution of prey animals. The human delegation was led by Admiral Carter, but the real negotiators were the nightmare units themselves. A Reaper unit stood behind Carter, its presence making the Vorthak delegation flinch every time it moved. They had learned to fear the creatures that smiled while planning violence. "The terms are simple," Carter explained to the Vorthak leaders. "Your species will serve as auxiliary forces for human expansion. You will help establish and defend colonies on dangerous worlds. In return, your species will survive, and your young will be protected." The lead Vorthak, a scarred veteran named Krex, who had once commanded a 1,000-ship hunting fleet, accepted the terms with visible relief. "We agree to serve Earth predators. We will teach humans how to hunt on death worlds. We ask only that shadow creatures not hunt our young." Carter looked at the Reaper unit, which nodded almost imperceptibly. "Agreed. As long as your species serves faithfully, Earth's predators will protect rather than hunt your children." The treaty was signed within hours. The Vorthak, once the terror of human space, became humanity's first alien vassals. Word of the surrender spread through the galaxy faster than light-speed communication, carried by traders, pirates, and refugees who had witnessed the war. Other alien species received a clear message. Earth was not just another world with an aggressive native species. It was a planet that had spent billions of years perfecting the creation of perfect predators. And those predators were now loose among the stars, protecting humanity's children with the same efficiency they had once used to hunt in Earth's ancient forests and oceans. 5 years later, Admiral Carter stood in the observation deck of Luna Station, watching Earth turn slowly in the void. Human colonies now stretched across 50 star systems, all protected by creatures that had evolved in his homeworld's evolutionary crucible. Children on distant worlds played safely in parks patrolled by pack hunters that responded to their laughter with protective instincts. Farmers worked fields watched over by swarm units that kept dangerous alien wildlife at bay. Merchant ships traveled protected by Leviathan units that moved through space like living guardians. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology, their ships, or their weapons. It was their birthright as children of Earth, the ultimate death world that had created predators capable of hunting anything that threatened the pack. Carter's assistant brought him a report from the frontier colonies. "Sir, first contact with a new alien species. They're called the Zilani, and they've been raiding our outer settlements."